Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talk Thursdays. My name is Pascale Hansen. I'm the CEO, co-founder, and financial strategist at Zada, a consulting firm servicing North America. What makes us unique is that we partner with the best experts in every field of business to help champion the business growth of our clients, and Talk Thursdays are my conversations with some of them. I hope you enjoy this episode. And today I'm happy to have a conversation with one of our experts, Robert Murray, who's a former Fortune 100 executive. He's a #1 best-selling author, international keynote speaker, and business and strategy expert. He's also a lifelong executive leader who helps leadership and business problems by helping individuals unlock their leadership greatness. He's also an Elevate contributor. So Elevate is our online course, video lessons in there from a host of different experts and really on topics from A to Z. I think the second lesson in there is one of Robert's, because strategy is so fundamentally important. So we're here to get a little insight into what his values and thoughts are. So thank you, Bob, for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks, Pascale, for having me.
The first thing I want to ask is, what is the link between culture and strategy, and why is it so important today, probably more than ever?
Oh, it's a great question. So, as you can tell by my gray hair, I've been around for a while, and I think back into my 20s and 30s when you could have a work environment where it was very command and control. You were able to attract employees and retain employees that were looking for a job for life, and they were chasing a paycheck. Today's talent isn't like that at all. Today's talent wants to work for an organization that shares the same values that they do, that shares the same sort of purpose in life as they do, and they want to work for an organization where they feel like they are a fit. And culture is, or has never been, a more important, and culture today is a defining distinctive excellence for organizations in the business world. So if you haven't figured out how to build a functional culture, then you're going to be left behind, and you're going to struggle for the next number of years finding talent and retaining talent. The other thing is, Peter Drucker once said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. As a turnaround guy and as a strategist, one of the things I see today is that culture eats everything for breakfast. So until you get your culture house in order, strategy is not going to work. So that's where culture and strategy are linked together today, in that culture comes first, then strategy, not the other way around. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you touch on that in your lesson in Elevate as well. So I just want to mention Bob's lesson is called Strategy from 19,330 feet. So if you're curious about that, check out that lesson. It is amazing. And so as a leader in a business, how do you look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, that SWOT in your business to focus the team on like key priorities?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. So every strategic planning session I've ever been involved with, right from my early days, there's some type of a SWOT analysis where the team comes together, and they might use multiple flip chart pages, and they build their strengths, and then there's double the amount of weaknesses, and by the way, that's normal for every organization, and then opportunities and threats. Well, at the end of it all, you might have repapered the wall with all of these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What do you do with this? What do you do if you got 200 items? What do you do with it? So one of the things I've found in strategy work that I'm doing these days is that I get the team, the executive team, to prioritize to find the top 5 in each category. So now you're working with a list of 20 versus a list of 200. And then from that list, we then zero in on what is our relative strength for each one compared to our competitors. And you can rank it from 1 to 10. 5 meaning that we're kind of like somewhat the same as our competitors. And then you can plot that. If you want to, you can plot it on some type of a y-axis. And then on the x-axis, and this may sound complicated, but believe me, it's super simple. What is the strategic importance of each one of the ranked SWOTs that you have to the success of the organization? 5 is kind of like, it's kind of neutral. Anything less than that, then it's not really that important and it probably shouldn't be on the list. Anything above that, it's strategically important. So if you plot that along the x-axis, what you'll find is the intersecting lines for each one of those ones will probably land you into like a top right-hand quadrant, which means that it's what I call the green zone, and that anything lower in the bottom right quadrant is going to be your red zone. Green zone is stuff that you have to protect. Red zone is stuff that you have to mitigate. It just takes a whole lot of data, and it is able to distill it down into something that you can focus on and build tactics around when you get into the strategic planning part after you do the SWOT analysis. So as it sounds complicated, but believe me, it's super simple. First, rank all your SWOTs, then take them and apply a rating to it for our relative strength compared to our competitors and the strategic importance to the organization. And it will paint a very clear picture for you as to what you have to focus on.
Well, it sounds like a good exercise just to make sure everyone's on the same page and there's agreement with what those priorities would be.
Absolutely. And, and it's funny, I kind of took that or stole part of that from Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs first came back to Apple in 1997, they were about 3 months away from bankruptcy. And what he did was he pulled the executive team together and they spent a couple of days doing a SWOT exercise. And at the end of it all, they had hundreds of data points on flip charts. Then he had them prioritize it from number 1 to number 200, or however long the list was. And then when they finished doing all of that, and it took him a long time, he took a big, thick black Sharpie and he crossed out number 200 to number 4, so that there was 3 things left. Basically everybody was appalled by it, but the bottom line was, what is the most important thing that we have to focus on right now? And this exercise allows the team to distill a lot of information down and get to the vital few.
And then get results, because now you have 3 things, not 200.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so for every company, you have to differentiate yourself so you can be competitive. So, every company, I guess you could say, have their secret sauce. So how do you determine what that is, and how do you use it to align your team and to keep growing your business?
Oh, this is so powerful, Pascale. So here's the thing. If I get hired by somebody to do a strategic plan, I'll go and do discovery interviews one-on-one with lots and lots of people, employees, partners, customers. And when I'm interviewing customers for this company, I will ask them, why do you buy from this company? Whatever their product or service is. And customers, especially the highest profit customers, the customers that bring the most profit to the organization, they are explicitly clear. I buy from Zada, for example, because. And what I found over the years is that you can distill the reasons because down to 4 key points. The company provides the best customer service, or they have the highest quality, or they're the most efficient in terms of price or ease of doing business with, or they're the most innovative. 4 things only. Customers are explicit. They say, I buy from XYZ because they have the best customer service, period. But when I go internal and I talk to the organization, depending on what department they're from, I will often find that the organization looks somewhat schizophrenic and they don't really know what their secret sauce is. So the exercise of doing this is really all about aligning the entire organization around what makes them great to customers, and then making sure that we build action in our strategic planning around becoming more of what makes customers happy and why they buy from us. Specifically, specifically the high value customers.
Well, I think that is so critical for business because unless you know why, how do you have the right direction? Because you might think
Oh,
people buy from us because our brand is pretty, whereas it
oh,
could be
yeah,
because they trust you because you've been around for a long time, or whatever the customer says is really where you need to focus. So that also ties
absolutely.
in, yeah. So that also ties into vision. So I would
Mhm.
imagine, the bigger a company is, you could have different people, even on the executive team, where their vision for the company is very different.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. When when I went to university, I should have took psychology instead of marketing. One of the things that I found in building strategy with organizations is that most organizations, most business leaders, in fact, most business schools do not understand the difference between mission or purpose, and purpose and mission, by the way, are exactly the same,
Mhm.
vision and strategies. So purpose and mission are supposed to be about why. Why do you do what you do and why would anyone care? Vision is all about what do you want to achieve over a period of time and how are your strategies for how you're going to get there. Interestingly enough, the human brain thinks in a very specific order as well because of the way it's constructed. Oh, and through thousands of years of evolution, our brain, all of our brains think exactly the same way. We think why first, then what, then how.
Mhm.
So when it comes to vision, which is the what part of what we want to achieve, so it's like 3, 5 years into the future, this is the mountaintop that we want to climb, and this is what we want to achieve. That part of the brain likes to have things in a very specific order. It likes to work on things that are meaningful, otherwise, it's not motivational. It likes to work on things that are memorable because it makes people feel important and they like the reward sensation that comes from achieving. And number three, it likes to measure things. So here's the mistake that I find a lot of business schools and strategists make when working on strategy is that they create a vision that can't be measured.
So then you don't know if you're making progress or not. If you're
Exactly. One
passionate.
of the
Yeah.
very best visions of all times came from John F. Kennedy, May of 1961, when he stood up in front of Congress and said, and I paraphrase, "We're going to put a man on the moon. By the end of this decade, return him safely home to Earth again." Meaningful, memorable, measurable. And
Right.
that is what motivates, and in that case of the United States, it motivated the entire nation around putting a man on the moon.
Yeah. So how do you get your team to engage around building those strategies? I would imagine if they're, um, you mentioned, if it's purposeful, if they understand why, what the mission is that enough? If they know
No,
what,
well, but here's the thing is that here's the mistake that also a lot of leaders and strategists make is that the the vision has to come from the senior leader in the room. So if it's a CEO for the company, or if you happen to be a vice president building strategy for your team, or you're a manager building strategy for your project, the vision, in other words, that point in the future, has to come from the leader. Then after that, you can just go to the team and say, well, if we want to put a man on the moon, um, we we that's the direction that we're going to go in, and how are we going to do it? So you can ask the question, how are we going to do that? Oh my goodness sakes, I've got a little strategist that joined me, and I just
oh,
don't.
she's so cute. Who's
Yeah,
this?
I know this is the virtual world that we operate in right now, and that yeah, yeah, that's right. You
And
wave to
what's your
everybody
name?
out there. Yeah, this is Emery. Isn't this great? This is the thing I love about the virtual environment is you get to see people as they really are. Here's the thing. When the leader is created the direction, so the vision, then the leader can then go to the team and say, how are we going to do this? And I've got a great exercise for it, and I call it the bucket exercise, where you can actually, the leader grabs a pen and a bunch of flip chart paper. Flip chart paper works great for this. Is then you say, how are we going to do this? How are we going to put a man on the moon? And then you start capturing ideas. You fill pages of it. And at the end of it, when the team's exhausted all the initiative or ideas, You take a pair of scissors and you cut all the ideas into individual strips of paper. And it's such a cool exercise. Then you take all the strips of paper and you put them on the floor, and then you say to the team, all right, organize these into 3 common themes. And the team will somebody in the team will say, well, what are the themes? What's the title? And you say, I don't know, just organize it.
Yeah.
It takes literally 5 minutes, and they will have 3 columns of paper on the floor. And then when you look at the individual columns, you'll see a theme emerge. It might be around, efficiency, production, go-to-market strategy, culture strategy, a customer strategy. You will see a theme there. Those themes become your strategies. And notice I said 3 because Jim Collins, the author of From Good to Great, says if you have more than 3 priorities, you have no priority.
Yeah, fair enough. Sounds like a fun exercise as well. And
Oh, that's awesome.
I would imagine, since you help cultivate leaders and help solve their problems, I would imagine one big problem is that as an individual leader, you might have this great vision, but your block is, how do you sell it to the team so they're excited about it?
Well, and that's the thing, is that by the team doing this, it engages them and inspires them to commit deeper to it.
Because they have an ownership in it, like they're coming up. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so what are the steps to execution excellence?
Well, there has been so many strategic plans that have been built around the world over the last, 100 years or whatever. I would say that a huge percentage of them end up in a binder that gathers dust on the shelf,
Yeah.
and nothing gets done. And it's because the leader, the one key leader for the team, the department, or the project, whatever, isn't following 3 key things. Number 1 is that everybody in the team needs to have a role and a responsibility towards achievement of the plan. So they have to know that when I do this, this is how it contributes to the plan. Number 2 is they don't communicate enough. Psychologists will say a human being needs to hear a message between 7 and 10 times before it becomes embedded in them. So often leaders will think, well, I sent out the email. Didn't you read the email? Well, no, it has to be repeated over and over and over again. And then the third step to execution excellence is every tactical item in a strategic plan is part of the overall project. The strategic plan is a project, and all projects have to be governed on a regular basis, once every 2 weeks or once a month. The team has to come together, and the leader has to review with the team, where are we with all these different initiatives.
Right. So project management obviously comes into play. So
it's project management 101. And that's when you don't have those 3 items in play, then the strategy will fail.
Yeah, because often, I agree with you. Some leaders will be like, well, I sent out the email and there's no clear accountability, who's doing what task. And then one person thinks the other person's doing it, and it's their responsibility. So I really think, communicating it every team meeting and putting it on paper where people can access it, just to avoid all the inefficiencies and time wasting, as it were. So
that's right.
So to finish up, I have one question for you that has nothing to do with leadership. So
Okay.
if you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, wow. What a great question. Interesting. I would like to have dinner with Steve Jobs, and I would like to have dinner with, and it might even be the same dinner, with Bill Gates.
Right.
Just simply because I would truly like to, those are 2 leaders that built something that is, there's probably not a person on the planet that doesn't know the brand, the name Microsoft and Apple. And just to dive into the initial visions that they had and how did they inspire the teams to go to get, and I'm sure there'd be completely different approaches, but and you read lots about it, but I would like to hear it from them themselves. um, I think that would be fascinating.
An amazing learning experience, definitely.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bob. I really appreciate it. And for those of you listening and watching, I encourage you to find out more about Bob at robert-murray.com. And if you have any questions for us, you can always reach us at info@zadacorp.com. Thanks for
Excellent.
watching, and bye for now.